Iori, a first-year university student, moved to the coastal city of Izu, planning to live with his uncle Tashio. Tashio owned the Grand Blue diving equipment shop. Upon arrival, Tashio invited Iori to explore the shop while he parked the car. Since he was about to start college, Iori decided to stay with his uncle. It had been 10 years since he last visited the coastal city. While enjoying the sea view, Iori suddenly noticed a girl removing her diving suit. Their eyes met. Shortly after, Tashio called him, and Iori immediately went to his uncle. Iori felt he had seen the girl somewhere before and was curious about the kind of people he would meet in his new environment. Opening the door, Iori was shocked to see a group of men playing rock, paper, scissors. These people were far from what Iori had expected in his new surroundings. Tashio welcomed Iori to his shop. Iori quickly asked why there was something strange in front of him, but Tashio mentioned that people always told him the apron he wore didn't suit him. However, that wasn't what Iori was talking about. He questioned why the group of men was completely naked. Tashio explained that this happened every day in his shop. Iori immediately ran out saying he wanted to go home. Shinji and Ryujiro noticed this and approached Tashio. Shinji asked Tashio who the guy that just arrived was. Tashio said it was Iori, his nephew from Izu University. Hearing this, Shinji and Ryujiro mentioned they had the chance to recruit a new member. Meanwhile, Iori wondered why there were perverts in his uncle's shop. Not long after, Shinji and Ryujiro chased after him, calling his name. Seeing this, Iori panicked and ran as fast as he could to avoid them. They called Iori shy, but Iori was more concerned about their naked appearance. It didn't take long for Shinji and Ryujiro to bring Iori back to the Grand Blue shop. Tashio still thought Iori was just homesick and said he would get used to it over time. Iori admitted he had run away because he was shocked to see everyone partying naked. They indeed liked to dress that way, but at that time they were playing rock, paper, scissors to determine who would prepare the diving equipment tanks, and for them, being naked was normal during the game. Ryujiro was chosen to prepare the tanks, and Iori accompanied him. Ryujiro introduced himself as a second-year mechanical engineering student at Izu University. Iori turned out to be in the same department as Ryujiro. Suddenly, Ryujiro confessed he would be happy if Iori joined his club, but Iori said he wasn't interested. Ryujiro then forced Iori to sign the club's registration form. Ryujiro asked if Iori was interested in diving. Iori was indeed interested but didn't want to do it because he couldn't swim. According to Ryujiro, if someone always stays in their comfort zone, they won't be able to go anywhere, and the important thing is whether they're interested in stepping out of that zone. Suddenly, a girl who had just finished diving approached Iori and greeted him. Iori looked confused, prompting the girl to ask if Iori had forgotten her. Nanaka, his cousin. Iori then realized and immediately apologized. Nanaka understood, considering they hadn't seen each other for 10 years. Nanaka asked if Iori had seen Chisa, expressing that Iori would be surprised at how cute Chisa had become. Nanaka mentioned that she and Chisa had just finished diving. Hearing this, Iori suspected the girl he had met earlier was Chisa. Nanaka asked if Iori was interested in joining Shinji's club. Iori said he wasn't interested, not because he didn't like diving, but because he was a technical school graduate and wanted to keep his distance from the technical school atmosphere. As Iori opened the door to the cafe, he saw a group of men without clothes. Nanaka then told Shinji to keep an eye on Iori. Ryujiro announced that they were holding a welcome party for Iori. Iori immediately stated that he had no intention of joining the club, but Ryujiro told him not to say such things and insisted that Iori always rejected something before even trying it. Iori denied it, but Ryujiro pointed out that Iori often complained about things he had never experienced, just like when he said being naked outdoors was bad even though he had never tried it. Ryujiro urged Iori to drink alcohol and invited him to play rock, paper, scissors while making to gain some experience. Iori shouted that he had no need for such an experience, but Ryujiro argued that there was no such thing as a useless experience. Shinji also encouraged him to try it, but Iori still refused. No matter how much they tried to persuade him, he refused to be dragged into their insane games. That night, Chisa walked alone, still wondering if the person she had seen earlier was really Iori. Suddenly, memories of her time with Iori 10 years ago resurfaced. When Chisa entered Grand Blue, she was shocked to see Iori among the alcoholics playing rock, paper, scissors. He had even won 3 times in a row and wanted to lose on purpose just to show off. Chisa walked in and Nanaka greeted her. Iori immediately greeted her as well and placed his hand on her shoulder, but Chisa quickly brushed it off. She even considered taking off her clothes just because Iori had touched her. unable to believe how much he had grown into such an idiot. Iori tried to explain that it was not what Chisa thought. He had no idea things would turn out that way. Ryujiro and Shinji commented that Iori was lucky to be living with his cute cousin. Iori, however, complained that Chisa treated him like garbage. He did not care though, since Nanaka also lived with him. However, it turned out that Nanaka was an extreme siscon. Iori could not comprehend what had happened in the past 10 years, especially since Nanaka was the only person who had ever been kind to him. Shinji reassured Iori, telling him that many people did not have perfect lives at home. Iori agreed with that statement and resolved to live his college life with enthusiasm as compensation. It was already late at night and some people had to leave since they had work the next day and needed to catch the train. Iori was about to go home as well, but Shinji and Ryujiro stopped him from leaving. Iori reasoned that he had orientation at 9 a.m. the next day, but Shinji assured him that he would be fine since they would make sure he would not be late. The next morning, Iori woke up only to realize that he had spent the whole night drinking with Shinji and Ryujiro. He panicked when he saw that his phone displayed 8:45 a.m. To his shock, he had fallen asleep outside, surrounded by a crowd of people who were even taking pictures of him. To make matters worse, he found himself in front of the campus auditorium. Ryujiro and Shinji smiled and told him that he would not be late. Iori had arrived at college filled with high hopes of meeting new people and starting a fresh chapter in his life. However, all of that was overshadowed by a gloomy beginning on his first day. Everyone remembered him as the guy who passed out in front of the auditorium. As Iori walked through campus, he overheard some girls admiring a handsome guy named Kohei. Iori looked at him but immediately lost any interest in approaching him when he saw the design on Kohei's shirt. That day, classes ended and some students were interested in checking out the clubs. Iori approached Chisa and asked if she wanted to walk with him to check them out. Without hesitation, Chisa walked away, reminding him not to talk to her while wearing those clothes. Iori wanted to change clothes but had no idea how to get home. Chisa was about to leave when Iori started following her, asking for directions. Chisa refused, not wanting to be seen walking with half-naked Iori. He then asked Chisa for her clothes. Chisa promptly reported to campus security that a half-naked person was asking her for clothes. Iori shouted that he and Chisa were cousins and should help each other. Chisa asked him not to say that out loud. Iori understood and threatened to tell everyone they lived together if she didn't give him her clothes. Frustrated, Chisa pretended Iori was committing a crime against her, prompting campus security to chase him. Fortunately, Iori managed to hide, still clueless about his wrongdoing. Suddenly, Kohei approached and asked what Iori was doing. Iori explained that the situation was complicated. Kohei offered to help, introduced himself, and asked Iori to explain. Iori said that Chisa wouldn't show him the way home or give him her clothes. Hearing this, Kohei informed campus security about Iori's location, thinking he was stalking and acting indecently. Iori claimed he had reasons, but Kohei ignored him and walked away. Iori then asked Kohei for his clothes, resulting in Iori becoming a fugitive from campus security again. Iori sneaked around looking for someone he knew to ask for help. At that time, there was a club exhibition and Iori hid at the diving club's booth. Nanaka and Ryujiro represented the Peekaboo Diving Club, handing out brochures and recruiting new members. Ryujiro told Iori that the coast was clear. Iori asked Ryujiro to lend him clothes. Ryujiro agreed on the condition that Iori recruited a new member for the diving club. Iori agreed and had a candidate in mind. Kohei was frustrated that there wasn't a club with a harem of high school girls idolizing him. Iori approached and encouraged Kohei not to give up, saying that if he persisted, his dream could come true. That's how the world works. Kohei realized that reality was harsh. Everyone told him he was dreaming and that there were no high school girls on campus, even though he hoped college life would bring his dream to life. Iori said such a place existed. Kohei just hadn't found the door to his dream yet. Iori invited Kohei to join him in opening that door. After joining the diving club, Kohei felt deceived by Iori. However, Iori finally got some clothes after recruiting Kohei. The diving club then started their celebration party. Ryujiro asked Iori what he wanted to drink. Iori requested oolong tea, but Ryujiro gave him vodka mixed with a bit of whiskey. Iori refused to drink it. Shinji wondered why Iori wouldn't drink it, noting that it looked like oolong tea. Ryujiro even showed that the drink could catch fire. Shinji handed Iori a glass of clear liquid that looked like water, but when Iori lit it with a match, it ignited. The diving club members toasted and drank alcohol together, while Iori stepped away and approached Chisa. She attended the event at her father's request and had also joined the diving club. Iori admitted he didn't want to join the club but was promptly dragged by Ryujiro and Shinji to drink with them. Reluctantly, Iori joined them. Shortly after, Kohei offered Iori a drink, but after tasting it, Iori realized it was vodka. Annoyed, Iori slammed his glass down and asked if Kohei was seeking revenge. Kohei said he had no such intention, he was just following their seniors' orders to get others drunk and recruit new members so he would join the club. Iori understood that someone had to make sacrifices and felt responsible for Kohei since he brought him into the club. Iori said he would get drunk alone and that Kohei should stick to drinking oolong tea. Kohei mentioned that Iori had made a beautiful self-sacrifice, but he only realized it was alcohol after taking a sip. Kohei immediately attacked Iori, and they started fighting. Shinji approached them and suggested a laughing contest. The rule was simple: whoever spit out their drink would lose. Iori and Kohei were intrigued by the idea, and all the club members cheered them on. In the first round, Iori had to hold back his laughter while Kohei tried to make him spit out his drink. Kohei attempted to make a ridiculous face, but it did not seem to work. Ryujiro then approached Kohei and advised him to change his strategy. He explained that people tend to laugh when they are supposed to remain serious. Taking his advice, Kohei decided to reveal something unexpected. He admitted that he used to be an otaku. The moment Iori heard this, he immediately spit out his drink. Kohei remarked that Iori could not hide his surprise, but Iori countered by saying that Kohei was the one who could not hide his otaku nature. Since Iori had lost the round, Shinji instructed him to do a sosu, meaning he had to chug an entire alcoholic drink in one go. Iori complied and immediately became dizzy, nearly bumping into someone. In his drunken state, he blurted out a pun in front of a senior. Upon hearing it, Kohei could not hold back and ended up spitting out his drink as well. As a result, Kohei also had to do a sosu. However, to everyone's surprise, Iori was ordered to do another one because making a pun in front of a senior was considered disrespectful. In the end, both Kohei and Iori had to chug their drinks together. They vowed to get back at each other for this, and the laughing contest continued until their bodies could no longer handle any more alcohol. Eventually, both of them ended up vomiting. Seeing this, Ryujiro poured them some liquid and handed it to them. They eagerly drank it, thinking it was water, but after reading the label on the bottle, they realized it was alcohol with a 96% alcohol content. Ryujiro simply remarked that they must really enjoy drinking. Meanwhile, Nanaka told Tashio that Iori had been hanging out with his friends from the club and had been out for 2 nights in a row. This meant Tashio had to reprimand him. The next morning, Iori and Kohei were in the lecture hall, completely naked. Shiza could not believe what she was seeing and had no idea how Iori had ended up like that. That day, Iori returned home with Chiza. Upon arriving at Grand Blue, they were met with the sight of Shinji, Ryujiro, and Tashio wearing only store aprons. Iori felt nauseous and wondered why they were dressed like that. They laughed with Ryujiro, explaining that they were about to go diving and were wearing swimsuits under the aprons. However, when Shinji and Ryujiro turned around, it was clear they had nothing on beneath the aprons. Suddenly, Nanaka informed them that the guest expected that day couldn't make it due to unforeseen circumstances. They all got dressed and sat down for lunch together. Shinji and Ryujiro mentioned they had free time before the drinking party that night and asked Iori how he planned to spend the time until evening. Iori replied that he didn't intend to join the drinking session that night. This annoyed Shinji, who promptly reminded Iori of the club he had joined. Nanaka suddenly asked if Iori knew where his room was, considering it was his 3rd day at Grand Blue. Iori realized he had been sleeping on campus for the past 2 days. Nanaka expressed understanding if Iori wanted to have fun on campus but insisted he couldn't sleep elsewhere for 3 consecutive days. Iori then conceded that he might indeed skip the drinking that night. Shinji and Ryujiro accepted this, noting that even without Iori, there were plenty of other members in the club. Suddenly, Ryujiro mentioned that they would be drinking that night with girls from Aonu Women's University. Hearing this, Iori begged Nanaka and Chiza for permission to join the party. Seeing Iori kneeling before Nanaka and Chiza, Ryujiro and Shinji asked what he was doing. Iori stated that he now remembered the club he had joined wasn't just about diving. Nanaka and Chiza were puzzled as to why Iori had taken off his clothes. Iori explained it was to show his sincerity. Despite Iori's earnest pleas, Nanaka remained firm, knowing he just wanted to have fun. At that moment, Iori asked Ryujiro and Shinji how he could get permission to go out that night. Shinji suggested giving up as Nanaka was very strict, but Iori refused to surrender. Shinji was curious about Iori's determination. Iori admitted it was driven by his sexual urges. Seeking advice on convincing Nanaka, Ryujiro suggested that Iori unpack his belongings in his room, but Iori felt that wasn't enough. Ryujiro then recommended decorating his room to make it look more mature. Ryujiro and Shinji even offered to help. Iori promptly informed Nanaka that he had finished unpacking and claimed he had become a mature man. When Iori showed Nanaka his room, she was shocked by the decor, filled with adult books, tapes, and pictures. Iori remarked that it wasn't supposed to be like that. Nanaka, surprised, commented that it seemed Iori had indeed matured. Shinji and Ryujiro asked Iori if the plan had worked. Iori scolded them, and Shinji wondered why it hadn't succeeded. Ryujiro noted that when a mother finds adult magazines in her son's room, she considers him grown up. Iori had hoped they would decorate his room normally, like a typical college student's first place living alone. However, Shinji and Ryujiro exclaimed that Iori should have said so earlier. Iori admitted his mistake in asking them for help and told them to take the magazines out of his room. Shinji said that he had actually planned to give one to Iori as a welcome gift and asked him to choose his favorite. Not long after, Chisa came to Iori's room to give him a shelf she no longer used. However, she suddenly saw Iori and his friends watching an adult film together. Without hesitation, Chisa hit Iori with the shelf she had brought. Iori blamed Shinji and Ryujiro for making Chisa misunderstand the situation. Shinji refused to take the blame, pointing out that Iori was the one who invited them to watch. Frustrated, Iori told them to leave but asked them to leave one tape behind for him. Shinji and Ryujiro refused to abandon Iori in his state of distress. They asked for one more chance to redecorate his room, and Iori decided to trust them. Iori then headed to the store where he ran into Toshio. Toshio asked if something had happened as Chisa looked upset. Iori explained that he was getting a warm welcome from his seniors. Toshio commented that Chisa was not handling the situation very maturely. Suddenly, Nanaka greeted Iori. As he was about to explain the misunderstanding about his room's decoration, Nanaka surprised him by saying she did not mind at all. She even mentioned that she had asked for friends, and they told her that it was normal for guys Iori's age. Iori explained that his seniors had been messing with him and that his room's decoration had already been restored to normal. Just then, Kohei was seen returning an adhesive to Toshio. Iori had a bad feeling about his room. His instincts proved right. Kohei had redecorated it entirely with images of loli characters. Horrified, Iori immediately tore down the giant poster. Kohei was furious and even cursed him for it. Iori was exasperated that his room was now filled with Kohei's terrible taste. Soon after, Shinji and Ryujiro arrived to check on Iori's room. They explained that they had asked Kohei to decorate it since he was also a freshman. However, this was not what Iori had wanted at all. He wanted the complete opposite. Kohei finally understood and agreed to redecorate the room again. Iori told him to leave, but Kohei refused. It turned out he had only done all of this in exchange for an adult tape featuring middle school girls, which the seniors had promised him. Not long after, Toshio called Iori over to help him. Although Iori had to go, he was still uneasy about what his room would look like next. His worst fears came true. When he returned, he found his room covered in BL, Boys Love, posters. Furious, Iori immediately punched Kohei. The new decoration was even worse than the last one. Iori ordered everyone to leave, but they ignored him. Shortly after, Nanaka called out to him, offering to help redecorate his room. However, Iori insisted that he was fine. Then the voices from the BL video the seniors were watching echoed through the room, sending shivers down Nanaka's spine. Horrified, she quickly left to call her friend again. Iori returned to his room and shouted that he would personally redecorate it so that he could finally join the party. He also wanted Nanaka to approve of the room's new look. Kohei asked if Iori had any ideas, and Iori decided to fill the room with pictures of Chisa, knowing how much Nanaka adored her younger sister. The seniors were skeptical about the concept, saying the room now looked like it belonged to a stalker. Kohei reminded everyone that the drinking party was about to start. However, Shinji informed them that the party had been postponed due to an issue. Iori was stunned to learn that the drinking party was not happening that day after all, meaning all his efforts had been for nothing. Moments later, Chisa arrived with tea. Upon seeing so many pictures of herself in Iori's room, she immediately took action, leading to Iori being confined in an empty room as punishment. The following morning, Iori woke up to find the club members gathered in his room. Curious about their presence, he asked why they were there. It turned out that the room was their usual gathering spot and they couldn't just change it because of him. Iori then headed to the shop where Toshio and Nanaka greeted him. Nanaka even complimented Iori for wearing clothes that day. Toshio inquired about any club activities scheduled. That day was meant for introducing new members who had joined. Nanaka asked how many new members there were. Ryujiro mentioned that 3 new members had joined: Kohei, Iori, and Chisa. Iori wondered why Kohei had come to Grand Blue. It turned out the seniors had informed him that voice actress Mizuki Kaya would be arriving at 10 o'clock. However, Iori was certain the seniors were lying, and sure enough, Shinji admitted it was just a prank. Unexpectedly, Kohei began to cry, feeling deceived. Toshio mentioned that lately, Mizuki Kaya had indeed been busy and couldn't visit for a while. Nanaka added that Mizuki Kaya used to come often, and even other celebrities did too. Kohei tried not to believe it, but Nanaka insisted she wasn't lying. Toshio even mentioned there was a diving suit that Mizuki Kaya used to wear. Hearing this, Kohei asked to try it on, a request that sounded somewhat inappropriate. Kohei then expressed interest in learning to dive. Chisa asked if she should join the diving lessons. Shinji allowed her to opt out since she was experienced, but Toshio requested Chisa to participate so she could understand how beginners learn to dive. Iori asked if he could just watch since he couldn't swim, but Ryujiro mentioned there are divers who can't swim, and according to Shinji, it would be a waste if Iori didn't at least try. Shinji instructed the 3 of them to swim. Iori remarked that it should be fine even if he couldn't swim. Shinji explained that while mastering swimming techniques wasn't necessary, all divers should become accustomed to water. They then proceeded to the changing room. The seniors explained that individuals afraid of water aren't suited for diving because they might panic during problems, making it hard to control breathing and leading to rapid air consumption. Therefore, safety is crucial, and they need ample practice. For basic training, Ryujiro asked Iori to open his eyes underwater. Iori attempted it but couldn't manage. Ryujiro then gave him a diving mask, and Shinji provided one for Kohei as well. After putting it on, Iori re-entered the water. He heard strange sounds, couldn't breathe, and couldn't move, but didn't feel pressure on his eyes. However, upon opening his eyes, he unexpectedly saw Kohei's naked body. Iori resurfaced, and Ryujiro asked if the underwater view was that astonishing. Iori didn't want to look again. Kohei scolded Shinji for removing his pants underwater, but Shinji claimed he was just helping Kohei stay calm. His diving equipment came off. At that moment, Chisa had just finished changing into her swimsuit and came out to join the practice. However, upon reaching the pool, she saw Iori completely naked, soaking in the pool. Seeing Chisa arrive, Iori felt a bit embarrassed and mentioned it was part of the training. Ryujiro commented that Iori liked taking off his clothes. Iori stated he didn't enjoy being naked. Chisa asked Ryujiro, who explained he was just training Iori to get used to the water. Chisa walked away to observe them from a distance. The seniors continued to persuade Iori to enjoy the beauty underwater, but Iori refused, stating he wasn't interested in going underwater anymore. After finishing practice, Iori sat alone in the shop. Nanaka approached him and asked how his diving practice had been. Iori replied that he hadn't enjoyed it at all. Nanaka then invited Iori to go somewhere with her. She took him to a large aquarium. Iori was puzzled as to why the aquarium allowed them in, considering it was already closed. Nanaka explained that Chisa sometimes helped out there. She showed Iori a video of Chisa diving in the aquarium. Seeing Chisa's friendly face and sweet smile, Iori remarked that it wasn't how he had imagined her before. Nanaka commented that Iori wasn't good at judging people and that Chisa was actually quite popular. She described Chisa as kind, and although she might sometimes be insincere and clumsy, she was sweet, good-natured, gentle, and had a pleasant scent. Iori gazed at the aquarium and mentioned that perhaps he should learn about fish too, as it might help him enjoy being underwater. Nanaka considered Iori's thoughts to be overthinking, pointing out that neither she nor Chisa had ever thought about that before. Iori speculated that it was because Nanaka and Chisa could swim and liked fish. Nanaka responded that no one instantly knows how to swim or has extensive knowledge about fish. They just want to experience what it's like. Iori didn't quite understand what Nanaka meant. Nanaka led Iori to a very large aquarium, and the view felt like an underwater world. Iori was amazed by it and felt as if he were in an underwater realm. However, Nanaka mentioned that it was merely an imitation of the underwater world, and there were many places to experience a world even more amazing than that. She revealed that it was actually Chisa who had asked her to bring Iori there, suggesting that perhaps Chisa wanted Iori to enjoy diving. Iori wondered why Chisa desired that. Nanaka speculated that Chisa simply wanted Iori to know that there was a beautiful world underwater. And that was also what Shinji and Ryujiro wanted. That's why they always encouraged Iori to dive. Iori then understood that no one likes to hear negative things about what they enjoy, and it's better to have many friends who share the same pleasures. That way it's more enjoyable for both him and them. Nanaka also wanted Iori to understand that although water can be intimidating, there's also a lot of fun to be had. Iori expressed that he was now more interested in the underwater world, which pleased Nanaka. After returning from the aquarium, Iori gave Chizette a keychain as a souvenir. Chizette remarked, asking if Iori hadn't considered how often she went there. Iori explained that the keychain was a token of his gratitude because Chizette had persuaded Nanaka to take him there. Chizette simply wanted Iori not to belittle diving activities, and Iori responded that he would give it a try. Chizette accepted the souvenir and asked how it felt underwater. Iori admitted that he didn't like it yet, but he wanted to get closer to it, which is why he wanted to give Chizette that gift, and he thanked her. Chizette suggested that Iori should have bought something cuter. That night, Iori dreamt of wearing a girl's high school uniform preparing to serve his seniors. Upon waking the next morning, he felt disturbed by the nightmare. He encountered his two seniors carrying a girl's high school uniform, which made him scream as it reminded him of his dream. Kohei wondered why they had given him a boy's high school uniform. Shinji mentioned that it was time to focus on club activities. Chizette approached them and was puzzled to see Kohei and Iori holding girls' uniforms like perverts. Iori insisted it was a misunderstanding, and Kohei explained that the uniforms were for diving. They were unsure how to wear them. Kohei even dressed his Ani-made body pillow in the uniform, believing it could ward off sharks. Shinji and Ryujiro then presented the actual diving equipment, revealing that the high school uniforms were not part of it. Iori and Kohei felt deceived. Shinji explained that diving requires significant funds, and the high school uniforms were a means to generate money. Kohei and Iori imagined how they could use the uniforms to earn money. Iori even envisioned selling himself to wealthy older men, bringing him to tears. Shinji informed them about the Izu Summer Festival, an event at their campus scheduled for May, which included an inter-club male beauty contest. The winning club would receive a cash prize, and they wanted Kohei and Iori to participate. Naturally, Iori and Kohei immediately refused. Ryujiro mentioned that the male beauty contest was called Danken, which sounded like a term for male genitalia. Iori and Kohei were shocked by the inappropriate sounding name. Iori asked if Chizette was aware of it. She had seen it the previous year. Kohei was unwilling to participate in the contest, especially wearing such uniforms and being laughed at. Shinji told Kohei that he was a sweet guy and should use his charm to help the diving club. Iori remarked that this meant they didn't meet him since they already had Kohei. Shinji stated that Iori would participate in the comedy category. Ryujiro asked Kohei and Iori to wear diving suits. That day, the seniors took them to the sea. Iori inquired if Chizette would join them, but she said she was tending the shop. Before Iori left, Chizette asked if he was looking forward to starting college life. Iori admitted he had been, but not anymore. Chizette was confident Iori would enjoy it. Iori trained with Ryujiro, while Kohei trained with Shinji. Ryujiro planned to teach Iori how to breathe underwater. He instructed Iori to place the regulator in his mouth and inhale. Iori tried it and found it very different from regular breathing. It required more effort to take a breath. Ryujiro acknowledged that it might be difficult at first, but assured Iori he would get used to it, encouraging him to try it underwater. Iori did so but soon surfaced, gasping for air. He tried again, but the second attempt was the same. He still ran out of breath. Iori felt scared to breathe underwater, but Ryujiro assured him it was only challenging initially and that he would get accustomed to it over time. Iori tried once more, but this time water entered his diving mask. Ryujiro adjusted the slightly loose mask. Suddenly, Iori noticed two people in a hurry and asked who those customers were. Ryujiro explained they were clients diving before their work commute. Iori was surprised that despite their busy schedules, they were willing to spend their valuable time and money to dive. Ryujiro expressed how amazing the place was. Iori recalled the large aquarium he visited with Nanaka the previous day. Ryujiro admitted he also feared running out of air underwater. He showed the spare regulator and explained it should be given to a friend who runs out of breath. He also mentioned the weight belt always faces the same direction, so it can be quickly removed in case of emergency. The diving equipment is designed not only for the user's safety, but also to assist diving buddies, and it has undergone thorough safety testing. Ryujiro assured Iori that he wasn't alone and that he would be there with him. Therefore, Iori should muster the courage to dive, knowing that Ryujiro would certainly come to his aid if needed. Iori began descending to the seafloor. When his knees touched the bottom, he opened his eyes and breathed calmly. He couldn't believe he had actually done it and didn't feel any discomfort. He discovered an underwater world he had never seen before, referring to it as a new world unknown to him. After the diving practice, Iori immediately approached Chisa, expressing that he now understood how amazing it was to breathe underwater, even though he couldn't swim, and described it as exploring a new world. Iori even compared it to being in outer space and experiencing zero gravity. He enthusiastically shared his first experience, and Chisa instructed him to change clothes. Shinji told Kohei that joy comes from understanding how to do something never done before. They gathered again for drinks at the shop. Tashio served food and asked if Iori had overcome his fear. Iori admitted he still felt anxious about entering the water, but Ryujiro noted that Iori was beginning to appreciate the joy of being in a new world. Iori thanked his seniors, but they reminded him that there was no reason for him to refuse the new world he would face, which involved wearing a uniform for the Spring Festival. The next morning, Iori woke up feeling dizzy from excessive drinking. Suddenly, a woman pressed his head and told him to go back to sleep. Iori was shocked to see a sexy woman beside his bed and thought it wasn't real. However, he considered that getting drunk and waking up next to a half-naked girl was normal at that time. Iori didn't even recognize who the girl was. Shinji and the others woke up, and Ryujiro mentioned that their club was an inter-campus club and that the girl was Azusa from Aomui Women's University. Iori asked why Azusa was sleeping there. Shinji suggested it was because there was a place to sleep there, but Iori pointed out that he had gone to bed first. According to Shinji, Azusa wasn't concerned about such matters, as evidenced by her clothes scattered around. Iori wondered why a woman would undress in a room full of men. Iori was surprised to see Ryujiro and Shinji dressed that day. It turned out they had activities outside and had invited Azusa. That morning, Azusa cooked okonomiyaki for them. After Kohei tasted it, he found it delicious. The club planned to sell okonomiyaki at the Izu Spring Festival, with the proceeds going to club funding. Therefore, Azusa would teach the new members how to make it that day. Meanwhile, Shinji and Ryujiro went to prepare the equipment, and after finishing, they would all eat together. Previously, Shinji and Ryujiro informed Kohei and Iori about an important matter regarding the Izu Spring Festival. They were actually tasked with persuading Chisa to participate in the women's beauty contest, with a promise that if Chisa won, it wouldn't have to join the men's contest. While learning to cook, Iori and Kohei pondered how to get Chisa to agree, knowing she usually refused to participate in beauty contests. They concluded they needed to catch Chisa off guard. Their plan was to get Chisa drunk and then trap her into agreeing to join the contest. Iori and Kohei began their scheme. Iori pretended to be hot and asked for a drink, to which Kohei agreed to prepare. Kohei returned with 2 glasses, claiming both contained oolong tea. However, the glass in his left hand held oolong tea, while the one in his right was a mix of vodka and whiskey. Iori took the glass from Kohei's left hand and offered it to Chisa, but she declined, saying she was busy. Suddenly, Azusa grabbed the glass from Kohei's left hand and drank it. Azusa sensed something unusual in Iori's drink, but Kohei insisted there was nothing odd and urged Iori to prove it. Their first attempt failed, so they switched roles. This time, Iori prepared the drinks. Unfortunately, while mixing them, Chisa approached Iori and remarked that his actions were truly awful, suspecting he was trying to get Kohei drunk. Once the food was ready, Azusa tasted Chisa's cooking and found it quite good. As they were eating okonomiyaki, Kohei and Iori suddenly offered Chisa a beer, but she refused. Azusa immediately requested the beer, commenting on how considerate Iori and Kohei were. She also mentioned hearing from Nanaka that Iori and Kohei were amusing, revealing that Azusa was the friend Nanaka often called, so she knew a lot about Iori. Iori then realized that Azusa must be aware of his room's decorations from that time. Accidentally, Iori spilled his drink and Azusa helped him clean up. During this, Iori explained that all the pornographic and homoerotic items in his room were just a misunderstanding. Suddenly, Azusa confessed that she liked both, feeling happy to meet someone with similar interests. Kohei didn't understand their conversation and reminded Iori to continue their mission to get Chisa drunk. Kohei and Iori prepared oolong tea and shaved ice made from alcohol, but fortunately, Chisa declined them. Chisa didn't understand what Iori and Kohei were trying to do, but Azusa questioned why they wanted to get Chisa drunk. They denied the accusation. Finally, Kohei and Iori confessed that they wanted Chisa to participate in the beauty contest, but Chisa immediately refused. They kept pleading, but Chisa remained firm in her decision. Azusa suggested that wasn't the right way to ask, and that they should explain their reason. Iori explained that if Chisa entered the beauty contest, They would get money and wouldn't have to join the men's contest. After hearing their reason, Chisa still refused to participate in the women's beauty contest. That night, Iori and Kohei informed Shinji that they had failed to persuade Chisa, meaning they would have to join the men's contest. Iori asked who had participated in the beauty contest the previous year, and it turned out Azusa had represented the diving club, but was eliminated in the first round because she forgot her swimsuit and only wore underwear, leading to disqualification. Shortly after, the club members started a naked rock-paper-scissors game. Azusa, who was sitting with Nanaka and Chisa, expressed her desire to join the men. Nanaka was surprised that Azusa was interested in such things. Seeing Azusa approach and express her wish to join, Iori and Kohei were shocked, not expecting that the loser of the game would have to strip. Azusa was already familiar with the rules of the game, and she was not going to end up completely naked since she was a woman. Iori was eager to take the first challenge against Azusa, but before long he lost and was already stripped down. He tried again to take another chance, but once again he lost. Azusa laughed, clearly entertained by Iori's antics. They continued with a speed-based challenge, and Iori showed no signs of giving up. By the end of the game, Azusa had successfully gotten both Kohei and Iori completely naked. Azusa returned to the table with Chisa and Nanaka, commenting on how fun the game had been. Nanaka mentioned how adorable she found Iori and Kohei, though Chisa was confused about what exactly was cute about them. It turned out that Azusa had taken a liking to them. She then asked Shizo why she was not interested in joining the women's contest, considering it was an advantage to be a woman. Chisa did not understand what Azusa meant, so Azusa assumed that the club members had no doubts about Chisa winning, which meant they believed she was the cutest. Chisa clarified that it was not that she did not want to participate, but she did not want to be the only one embarrassed. Azusa understood her reasoning. Shinji and Ryujiro informed the club members that Chisa had agreed to join the beauty contest thanks to Iori and Kohei. However, the high school uniforms were still given to Iori and Kohei. It turned out that Chisa had set one condition. If she was going to enter the contest, and Iori and Kohei also had to participate. Upon hearing this, Iori and Kohei immediately started arguing. They were frustrated that all their efforts from the previous day had been in vain, as they were still dragged into the contest. Iori insisted that Kohei should be the one to wear the female uniform, but Kohei refused. Their argument continued, but Shinji saw it as if they were having fun, while Ryujiro was happy to see how close they were. With the matter settled, Chisa felt relieved. That day marked the Izu Summer Festival, and Iori, Kohei, and Chizo were in charge of running Peekaboo's Okonomiyaki stand. Ryujiro arrived bringing drinks for Iori and Kohei and asked how their stand was doing. Iori responded that everything was going fine, but Kohei suspected they had some competition. Ryujiro pointed out that the neighboring stand, which was attracting a crowd of women, belonged to the Tinkerbell Tennis Club, known for its group of attractive, popular men. Kohei dismissed them as pathetic otaku, while Iori referred to them as pig's blood. Chisa urged Iori and Kohei to stop saying things like that. Suddenly, Azusa arrived without any clothes on, prompting Ryujiro to ask if she had walked there. Azusa explained that she had taken the bus partway. Iori was bewildered by how Azusa and Ryujiro could converse so casually. Chisa quickly handed Azusa some clothes to wear, and Iori asked why she was not already wearing something. It turned out that her outfit had gotten stained and she had not bothered washing it since it would just get vomit on it later that night anyway. When Chisa helped Azusa put on a shirt, it was apparent that Azusa's dress was too large, making it a tight fit. Ryujiro suggested that she look for a t-shirt instead, so Azusa asked Iori to help her find one. As Iori accompanied Azusa through the bustling school festival, she seemed to be enjoying the event. Out of nowhere, Azusa asked what type of guy Iori was into, leaving Iori shocked by the question. Azusa remarked that they had the same preferences, reminding Iori of a previous conversation in which she had said she liked both men and women. She explained that when it came to men, she preferred Shinji, while for women, she liked Nanaka. Iori was stunned, and Azusa then asked about his own preferences. Realizing this was his only chance to clear up the misunderstanding, Iori felt the need to tell her that he was not bisexual. However, Azusa expressed how happy she was to have met someone like Iori, admitting that she could not talk so freely with anyone else. She then grew even more curious about the kind of person Iori was attracted to. Later, while Iori and Kohei were working at the stand, Kohei questioned why Azusa had suddenly insisted on switching places with him. Iori remained silent, simply feeling guilty about the situation, which made Kohei even more curious about what happened. The two of them then wandered around the festival, enjoying the peaceful moment without any upperclassmen nearby. However, their sense of relief was short-lived when Shinji and Ryujiro suddenly appeared. Shinji brought up the idea of drinking with another club that was nearby. Kohei assumed it was some kind of group date and was excited about the possibility of meeting beautiful women. However, it turned out that the club they would be drinking with was the Rugby Club, made up of a group of muscular men. Meanwhile, Chisa and Azusa were dealing with two customers who were flirting with them. The situation made them visibly uncomfortable, prompting Iori and Kohei to step in and scare the customers away. Azusa thanked them for helping her out and suggested they take turns watching the stand. Before leaving, she whispered to Iori, urging him to tell her what he had done with Kohei. Iori quickly brushed her off, stating that he would be working at the stand with Chisa. Grateful that Chisa was keeping him company, Iori thanked her, prompting Chisa to ask what was going on. Iori admitted that he simply did not want to be alone with Azusa. Chisa noted that Azusa was beautiful and figured that Iori was just nervous about being alone with her. The two continued serving customers, and Iori asked when the beauty contest would begin. Chisa informed him that it would start at 4 o'clock, with the winner announced the following day. Iori reminded her to get ready, but Chisa nonchalantly said she wanted to participate as she was. Suddenly, Nanaka and Azusa arrived to pick up Chisa and help her prepare for the contest. Kohei, watching them leave, asked Iori where Chisa was going. Iori explained that she was getting dressed up for the competition, which made Kohei wonder if Azusa and Nanaka would end up dressing Iori as well. Annoyed, Iori retorted that Kohei, with his long hair, should be the one playing the role of Tamara. This led to an argument between the two. Ryujiro then stepped in, informing them that it was time to close the stand and head over to watch the contest. The beauty contest was about to begin, and the audience was buzzing with excitement, as it was the main event. Kohei wondered aloud if they would be performing on such a crowded stage later. The first contestant, Aina from Aomi Women's University, appeared overly made up. Suddenly, she blew a kiss toward Kohei. Next, it was Chisa's turn to take the stage. She appeared fierce, and her introduction was stiff and awkward. Her friends noticed that if she continued like this, she might lose. Shinji asked Kohei if he had any ideas. Kohei suggested that to make a shy girl shine, they needed to make her smile. However, Iori thought making Chisa smile would be very difficult. Shinji proposed that if they smiled, perhaps Chisa would smile too. They tried calling her name and smiling together, but that approach failed. Chisa's face showed disgust instead. Shinji then asked Kohei if he had any other ideas. Kohei suggested revealing her embarrassed side. The club members bared their chests and displayed banners supporting Chisa, but that method also failed. According to Kohei, she should have shown embarrassment, but instead, Chisa looked at them as if they were trash. Their plan failed, leaving only one option, lifting her skirt. Kohei planned to throw small balls at Chisa, like grade school boys embarrassing a girl. Iori thought this might make Chisa very angry. Ryujiro added that Chisa might kill Iori if he did it. Iori questioned why he had to be the one to do it and suggested deciding with rock, paper, scissors. However, Kohei had another idea. They would all throw the balls simultaneously so Chisa wouldn't know who the culprit was. They agreed to Kohei's suggestion. The first throw went smoothly, making Chisa feel embarrassed. The subsequent throws also hit their mark, and Nanaka didn't miss the moment to photograph Chisa. The club members praised Iori's throw. Iori then realized that his friends hadn't thrown any balls. At that moment, Chisa glared at Iori sharply. After the contest, Chisa searched for Iori, intending to beat him up. Iori and Kohei hid behind some plants when suddenly a beauty pageant contestant approached Kohei, surprising him. The overly made-up contestant asked Kohei to go out with her. Kohei mentioned that he didn't know her name. She introduced herself as Aina, a freshman at Umi University. Iori congratulated Kohei and wished them happiness. Just as Iori was about to leave, Kohei stopped him, asking why he was leaving him alone. Seeing Iori and Kohei arguing, Aina ran away. While the club members were drinking, Chisa suddenly approached Iori with a sharp look. Iori tried to explain that what he did on stage was to bring out Chisa's charm. Suddenly, Chisa said she owed Iori. Iori smiled happily because Chisa wasn't angry and even offered to buy him a pair of sexy underwear as thanks. It turned out Chisa handed him a large bottle of liquor to finish. Before Iori could finish his drink, he ran away because he couldn't handle it anymore. Iori sought refuge behind Azusa. Ryujiro asked if something had happened to Azusa that made her late. Azusa explained that a guy wanted to get close to her. That guy was Kudo, the captain of the Tinker Bell Tennis Club. Iori asked if Azusa was okay. Azusa recounted that she told Kudo to sign up for the male beauty contest, promising to cheer for him in the front row, and when Kudo signed up, she managed to escape. Shinji asked if Azusa would cheer for Kudo, but she said she wouldn't. Shinji was relieved Azusa was safe, and Ryujiro noted that Azusa was just in time for their meeting. Not long after, the members of the Rugby Club arrived for a drinking party with the diving club. According to Iori, this drinking party was even crazier than the last one. As Iori and Kohei went to get drinks, they noticed Aina sitting alone. Aina approached Kohei, leaving him confused as to why she was following him instead of joining the tennis club members. At that moment, Aina was rambling incoherently due to being extremely drunk. She confessed that the reason she had asked Kohei out was because she found him sexy, just like the reason she had joined the tennis club, because everyone there was sexy. She had thought that having a boyfriend would allow her to experience the college life she had always dreamed of, but instead, she ended up like this. Arina began crying loudly, saying that she had worked so hard, learning how to apply makeup, trying on clothes she would never normally wear, and doing things she did not want to do, only to become the butt of everyone's jokes. Iori assumed that the people Aina was referring to were from Tinkerbell. Kohei agreed, saying that if Aina wore makeup that thick, people would naturally think she was crazy. Aina protested, saying that they used to call her cute, but Kohei bluntly pointed out that they had actually been laughing at her. It turned out Aina already knew that. At first, she did not mind being treated like a joke as long as she had friends and could have fun. But after the drinking party following the contest, the Tinkerbell members had told her to go home because they had laughed enough at her expense. Aina realized that she never needed to try so hard to change because, in the end, no matter what she did, people would still laugh at her. And it was the Tinkerbell members who were mocking her. Iori stated that no one is always laughed at, nor is anyone always laughing at others, and he promised to show her something interesting. That night, the men's beauty contest began. The first contestant from the Rugby Club showed off his athletic physique. The next contestant was Kudo, the captain of the Tinkerbell Tennis Club. The audience cheered him on, suggesting that he had many fans. Kudo himself felt he was on a different level compared to the others. Next up was Kohei from the diving club, and the girls in the audience commented that he looked cute. Kudo was curious why Kohei was wearing a high school uniform. He admitted that Kohei seemed decent, but he was confident that he would be the one to win the contest. Suddenly, Kohei approached Azusa and asked her not to date Kudo. Instead, he asked her to date him. Kudo understood that Kohei was trying to attract attention that way, but he was irritated that Kohei had the audacity to use his name without permission. Kudo then approached Azusa and asked her to choose him instead. The audience eagerly waited to see whom Azusa would pick. Then Azusa reached out and took Kudo's hand. Kudo smiled and apologized to Kohei for how things turned out, like he believed that everyone was on their own level and that someone out there was a perfect match for Kohei. Suddenly, Kohei burst into laughter, mocking Kudo. It turned out that the Azusa who had chosen Kudo was actually Iori in disguise. Iori laughed, never expecting that he would turn out to be Kudo's perfect match. Kohei laughed as well, saying that Iori was on the same level as Kudo when it came to being a woman. At that moment, Iori from the Peek-a-Boo Diving Club officially entered the comedy contest. Just as Kudo was about to say something, Iori cut him off, teasing him by declaring that the captain had confessed his love to him. Kohei chimed in, saying that although it was painful, Kudo had to stay strong and he hoped that the two of them would stay together forever. Iori and Kohei then said in unison that they had laughed enough and told Kudo to go home. Iori had successfully demonstrated his point to Aina. The audience erupted into cheers and Azusa praised Iori and Kohei, saying that they had pulled it off. However, Chisa suddenly walked away. That night, the members of the diving club raised their glasses in celebration. Suddenly, Aina entered the room looking like she wanted to join them. Kohei handed her a bucket full of drinks to celebrate the party. He commented on how heavily Aina had done her makeup. Aina was shocked to see that Iori and Kohei could drink so much. Kohei explained that his body had been trained for it. The diving club members praised Iori and Kohei for their impressive drinking abilities. The next day, while working at the booth, customers started flirting with Chisa after learning that she had participated in the beauty contest. They scrambled to talk to her and some even dared to grab her hand. Normally, Iori and Kohei would have immediately stepped in to help, but they were still unconscious from drinking too much. Before long, Shinji and Ryujiro arrived to drive away the pushy customers. Later that day, the winner of the contest was announced. Chisa had won the beauty contest, but she looked gloomy on stage. Shinji and Ryujiro were curious about why she seemed that way. Azusa explained that Chisa had only entered the contest for Iori and the others. However, instead of supporting her, Iori and Kohei had worked hard for Aina. On top of that, Chisa had been constantly hit on by guys because of the contest, and no one had stepped in to help her. That was probably what had made her angry. The host then asked Chisa who she would share her joy with. Smiling, Chisa replied that of course she would share it with her boyfriend Iori, who was currently passed out on the stage. The host was surprised that Chisa was dating such a perverted guy. Shinji realized that Chisa was using Iori as an excuse to reject other men. Azusa became curious about what they would do now that they were together. That day on campus, Iori told Kohei that it seemed like their classmates were looking at him differently. Kohei felt the same way. Iori wondered why that was happening. Kohei did not understand, especially since he and Iori had been acting the same as usual. Kohei then asked Iori to go ask them what was going on. Iori told Kohei to do it instead, but Kohei suspected that they might not answer if asked, and that would hurt. When Iori tried to talk to them, one of them told him not to speak so casually to them because they would kill him. That was exactly what Kohei had predicted. Iori called it strange, but Kohei said it was nothing unusual for a first introduction. Their classmates' stares were terrifying. Iori was convinced that something had happened and wanted to find out what it was, but no one was willing to talk to him. Kohei suggested that Iori ask Chisa, but Iori found that impossible, especially since she was not wearing her usual expression, and she would probably glare at him. According to Iori, Chisa had been in a bad mood ever since the Izu Spring Festival. When Iori turned around, he suddenly saw Chisa smiling at him. That made him even more certain that something had happened to him. Besides that, he could feel the murderous intent around him growing stronger. Kohei was sure that Chisa knew something. When Iori approached Chisa to ask her, Chisa told him that he could talk about it in their room after they got home. Immediately, the classmates who had been staring daggers at him stabbed their pens into the table as if they were ready to kill Iori. Iori screamed and demanded that Chisa tell him what was going on, but Chisa claimed she knew nothing, and Iori did not believe her. Chisa insisted that she had nothing to do with it. Suddenly, his classmates threw a piece of paper at him with a message telling him to break up with Chisa immediately, or they would kill him. Iori showed the paper to Chisa. Kohei asked if he and Chisa were dating. Just as Iori was about to deny it, Chisa said they had been dating since before the school festival. Kohei reminded him that if they continued dating, their classmates would kill him. Iori said he would do as they wanted, but then suddenly thanked Iori for choosing to risk his life for Chisa. Iori was baffled, wondering what Chisa was planning. Their classmates started to approach Iori. Kohei asked if he had anything to do with this, but one of them stated that they were only after Iori. Kohei immediately decided to leave the room, claiming he had something to do. Iori tried to stop him, but Kohei refused, saying he did not want them to see that he and Iori were close. Iori shouted that Kohei was his best friend. He also yelled that Kohei had started dating a girl from Aomori University named Azusa 2 weeks ago. Upon hearing that, their classmates immediately stabbed their pens into the table, indicating that they now wanted to kill Kohei. Iori explained that it was because Kohei was his friend and their situations had to be the same so that they could figure out how to escape together. Just as Iori was about to ask Chisa something, she had already left the room. When they were in the cafeteria, they received a lot of letters, even from students in different departments. Iori and Kohei still had not decided what to do when suddenly 2 guys named Shinichiro and Hajime approached them and said they wanted to help. Hearing that, Iori and Kohei were relieved and thought they were good people. However, it turned out that in exchange, they wanted to learn how a perverted guy could use a shaman to get a girlfriend. Iori, however, told them that he had never used a shaman. Shinichiro and Hajime then informed the others that Iori had never used a shaman. Their classmates immediately started discussing something about the mountain behind the empty clubroom. Iori suspected that they were talking about a place to bury him. Suddenly, they invited Iori and Kohei to play hide and seek, but Iori and Kohei refused. They kept insisting and Iori began pleading, explaining that his relationship with Chisa was not what they thought. However, Kohei said that Iori was Chisa's childhood friend. When Iori claimed that Chisa was just someone he knew from college, Kohei countered by saying that Iori and Chisa spent 24 hours together. Iori insisted that he and Chisa were not dating, but Kohei mentioned that they lived together. Out of nowhere, those people started shouting to prepare a shovel, gloves, and a towel. Iori was furious because Kohei's words only made them more eager to bury him. Iori tried to explain his relationship with Chisa again, but they no longer cared. They believed that Iori had taken the only flower blooming in that department, and they also thought Kohei was dating a beautiful girl from Aomori. Kohei attempted to clarify, but they refused to listen. In the end, Iori and Kohei decided to arrange a group date for them all. With that, those people started seeing Iori and Kohei as their friends. Iori and Kohei told their seniors about the situation and begged Azusa to introduce them to her friends. Iori even pleaded, saying it was the same as saving their lives. Azusa asked why Iori did not ask Chisa. Iori immediately ran to Chisa and begged her, but Chisa only looked at him like he was trash. Iori then went back to Azusa and told her that Chisa was in a bad mood. Azusa agreed to introduce her friends, but on one condition. Iori had to pretend to be Chisa's boyfriend until Chisa told him to stop. Hidori reluctantly agreed since it was the only way to save his life. The next day, Azusa brought a girl to Iori and Kohei. They were both shocked that Azusa had brought a normal-looking girl and thanked her for saving them. Iori and Kohei hurried to entertain the girl. Ryujiro asked Azusa if the girl had entered Grand Blue, which meant she had to become a club member. Shinji asked how Azusa found her. Azusa admitted that she did not find her. Iori and Kohei did. The girl introduced herself as Aina, who had left the Tinkerbell Tennis Club and wanted to join the Peekaboo Diving Club. Kohei and Iori were stunned to realize that the girl was Miss Over the Top. It turned out that after the Izu Spring Festival, Aina had expressed her desire to join the diving club. Azusa then reminded Iori to keep his promise. Aina glanced at Chisa and said she was happy to meet the people in the diving club. Iori and Kohei knew there was no way they could make Aina arrange the group date. That day, Shinichiro and Hajime met Iori and Kohei for their group date. They were curious about what kind of girls they would be meeting and which university they were from. Shinichiro asked what the girls were like. Iori said that the girl was serious yet laid back, a complete contrast. Iori mentioned to Kohei that Aina did not seem excited about the group date. Kohei was confused as to why Aina refused to introduce her friends. Shinichiro and Hajime were convinced that she did not want to introduce her friends to perverts like Iori and Kohei. Hearing that, Iori and Kohei were offended, even though Shinichiro and Hajime had just considered them their friends moments ago. Shinichiro and Hajime started beating Iori, saying that he already had a girlfriend, which was why the girl did not want to introduce him to her friends. Just as Iori was about to explain that he and Chizo were not dating, he suddenly remembered his promise to Azusa to pretend to be Chisa's boyfriend. They finally arrived at the location for their group date. Before entering the cafe, Hajime suggested they come up with a signal, pointing their chopsticks at the girl they liked to prevent any conflicts. If they did not like anyone, they would point the chopsticks at themselves instead. Unfortunately, Shinichiro did not need such signals because he had already made a vow to his heart to date anyone regardless of who they were. Iori and Kohei called him incredibly manly, like an honorable warrior, but Hajime dismissed him as trash who would sleep with any girl. When they entered the cafe, they were shocked to see that all the girls Aina had brought were heavily made up. Iori was absolutely furious with Aina. Unexpectedly, Shinichiro continued with the blind date and engaged them in conversation, even though his friends had hoped he would just give up. Shinichiro chose one of the girls among them, pointing his chopsticks toward the girl in front of him. After toasting together, the girl began introducing herself. The first girl was named Kyoko, the one Shinichiro had chosen, and he asked about Kyoko's hobbies. Kyoko mentioned that her hobbies were horse racing and pachinko. The next girl was named Keiko, followed by Kanako and Aina. Iori, Hajime, and Kohei also introduced themselves. The three of them immediately chose their respective girls and sat across from them. Shinichiro felt touched because his friends were helping to make the blind date go smoothly. Hajime reminded Iori and Kohei that their supporting role was to make the blind date more lively. Iori started a conversation with Aina, mentioning that Aina looked different than usual. Kanako asked in what way Aina was different. Iori replied that Aina's clothing and makeup were different. Aina explained that since it was a blind date, she had made a great effort in her preparations. Hajime offered drinks to Iori and Kohei, reminding them that their task was to make Shinichiro into a man. The three agreed to let the girls call them by their real names to appear more familiar. They all began introducing themselves by their real names, but suddenly Aina mentioned that changing nicknames would cause club members to misunderstand. However, if Iori still wanted to call her by her name, Aina wouldn't force him. Just as Iori was about to call Aina, Kohei immediately stuffed Iori's mouth with a bottle of drink to prevent him from ruining the event. Hajime reminded them that their role was to support Shinichiro. Iori reluctantly said that he really wanted to call her by the name Aina. Aina then asked Iori to say it once more. The food arrived. The menu at that time was ramen salad. The girls immediately took photos together because they had just heard of that food menu. While the girls were discussing some photos, unexpectedly, Aina showed a picture of Kanako without heavy makeup. Iori and the others then suspected that the girl was actually beautiful. Iori and Hajime pointed their chopsticks toward Kanako and invited her to chat. The two of them wouldn't give up on winning over Kanako. Suddenly, Shinichiro pointed his chopsticks toward Kanako, indicating that Shinichiro had changed his target when Kanako mentioned she liked Kanamoyo films. Upon seeing a photo on Kanako's phone of the female witch monster Lalako, Kohei immediately became interested in her. Suddenly, Kohei approached Kanako and invited her to come to his room. The girls suddenly went to the restroom together. Shinichiro became upset with his friends, thinking they were supporting him. They almost got into a fight, but Iori reminded them that they were friends and that jealousy wasn't the solution. Instead, cooperation was the key to victory. Iori mentioned that if one of them became close, they could have another blind date tomorrow or the day after. Hearing that, everyone agreed and was excited to achieve victory together. Iori approached Kanako. Seeing Iori chatting so closely with Kanako, Kohei and the others felt annoyed. Suddenly, Kohei approached Iori and asked how he and his girlfriend were doing. Iori was surprised by Kohei's jealousy over his success in getting closer to Kanako, especially since he was just one step away from achieving his dream of having a girlfriend in college. However, to his surprise, Kanako did not react at all after finding out that Iori had a girlfriend. Aina invited her friends to order dessert. Iori wondered if Aina was helping him, but it turned out that Kanako said Aina had already told her that Iori had a girlfriend. The blind date came to an end, and the girls thanked Iori and the others. In the end, nothing came of the blind date. It was just a waste of time and money. Iori asked his friends if they had heard what was said after they turned around, and it turned out that the girls had called them a zoo. Unwilling to be called animals, they countered by calling themselves street performers. Regretting that they had arranged the blind date, they immediately decided to go drinking together because there was no way they could go home in such a state. That night, Kyoko asked Aina if what they had done was enough. Aina apologized for making them do that to help her. However, Kanako said that wearing makeup like that was fun, and Keiko also thanked Aina for letting them copy the report. Kyoko mentioned that maybe there were some nice guys at that time, but since they looked so overdone, it was understandable. Aina said it was fine because it was not the first time they had seen them like that. She then asked if guys who did not care about appearances were not every girl's dream. Her friends laughed and told her that she had been watching too many dramas. Meanwhile, Iori and the others were getting drunk. He lamented that if his friends had not interfered, Kanako would have already been his. However, Kohei told him it was too late to complain. Hajime even reminded them that they were all friends and Shinichiro would never forgive a traitor. That day, while at the cafeteria, Iori begged Chisa to stay by his side, but Chisa refused. Iori kept pleading, but Chisa continued to reject him and told him to give up. It turned out that Iori wanted Chisa to sit next to him and let him see her answers during the upcoming German exam. Iori then told his three friends that he had failed to persuade Chisa to let him cheat. Shinichiro mentioned that if they failed the German exam, they would be in trouble. No matter what, Iori and his friends had to find a way to pass because there was no time left to study. The exam was about to start soon. Iori shrank a copy of his notebook to make cheat sheets for the exam. After printing them out, the only thing left to do was figure out how to hide them. Yu and Kenta approached them and asked for the cheat sheets. Iori wondered why he always attracted losers like them. Yu hid his cheat sheet inside his pencil case. Shinichiro hid his behind a water bottle label. Kohei tucked his inside a towel. Hajime hid his in the clip on his arm. Iori placed his behind his fan, and Kenta stuffed his inside his shirt. After that, they all encouraged each other to pass the German exam together. As the German exam was about to begin, the German lecturer instructed them to remove their pencil cases from their desks. This meant that Yu could not cheat. Yu immediately signaled Shinichiro for help, but shortly after, the lecturer also banned eating and drinking during the exam. Hearing that, Shinichiro gave up and begged Iori to help him instead. Iori wondered why the others seemed so relaxed. The lecturer announced that the exam would start at 1 o'clock and that those who finished early could leave. Two confident students left right away. It turned out they had already given up on the exam. A little later, Iori noticed Hajime panicking because his cheat sheet had become unreadable due to sweat. Kohei suddenly realized that Shumikawa was not in class. It turned out that Shumikawa had skipped school and had messaged Iori earlier to ask what would be on the exam, but Iori had refused to tell him. Iori and the others planned to work together because some of them could not use their cheat sheets. Kenta, whose cheat sheet was still safely hidden inside his shirt, was about to help. Unfortunately, as he pulled his collar, the paper flew straight to the front of the lecturer's desk. When the lecturer asked about the paper, Iori and the others immediately pointed at Kenta, exposing him for cheating. The lecturer quickly realized that none of them could actually answer the exam questions. Iori complained that the questions were too difficult. The lecturer then decided to give them a bonus question. He instructed them to write a new question on the back of their exam papers and translate it into German. The first question was arthritis, the second was a man holding a banana while naked, and the last was James Thomas. They were all baffled by how absurd and difficult the questions were. Iori and his friends ended up scoring between the low teens and 20s on their exams. Their grades were terrible, and they knew they had failed. Suddenly, the lecturer announced to those with bad scores that if they had more than 10 points, they passed, and if they had more than 20, they got an A. Hearing this, Iori and his friends felt relieved, thinking they were saved. Unfortunately, when Iori read the note on the back of his exam paper, it said, "You are stupid for using a cheat sheet and still getting a bad score. You need to take a remedial exam." After classes, Iori and his friends gathered at Grand Blue. Ryujiro asked about the blind date from the previous day. Iori described it as a disaster and showed photos of the overly made-up girls. Aina mentioned that she and her friends had made an effort and that Iori and the others should be grateful. Hearing that Aina wanted to join their club, Kohei inquired if she knew what kind of club it was. Aina replied that it was a diving club and she wanted to try it because she thought it was an adult hobby. She was interested in the feeling of swimming in the sea and seeing various types of fish. She also liked the idea of diving on tropical islands with college friends as it seemed like a TV drama. Iori and Kohei in unison said that if that was her reason, Aina shouldn't join the club, but they were just joking. Shinji and Ryujiro called Aina to introduce herself at their club's new member welcome party. Aina introduced herself, saying she was interested in diving but had never tried it and wanted to learn a lot from that point on. Before she could finish her sentence, she was shocked to see the club members taking off their clothes. Aina asked Iori and Kohei why they were undressing. Iori and Kohei told Aina not to be so surprised since she had seen it during the Izu Spring Festival. Aina then realized they were naked not just because of the post-festival party. She was also surprised to see Azusa undressing. Aina thought Chisa was the only normal-minded person in the club. At that moment, Chisa was sitting on Iori's back. Shortly after, Nanaka arrived with drinks and told Chisa to get off Iori's back. Aina felt relieved and considered Nanaka to be a normal person in the club. Not long after, Aina saw Nanaka pick up Chisa's leftover drink and immediately sip it. Aina wanted to ask Iori and Kohei about it, but Kohei asked her to pretend she didn't see it. Soon, Shinji and Ryujiro pulled Iori and Kohei to toast together. Chisa asked Aina if she was interested in diving, and Aina admitted it, which made Chisa happy. Chisa, Aina, Nanaka, and Azusa chatted together. Nanaka mentioned that Aina was the only person who joined the diving club out of genuine interest. Aina asked what equipment was needed for diving. Just as Chisa wanted to show her book, Azusa said that as a beginner, Aina could just rent equipment. Nanaka said the most important thing was for Aina to prepare a towel and swimsuit. Hearing the word swimsuit, Aina felt embarrassed, which made Nanaka laugh. Azusa told Aina not to feel embarrassed. Aina realized they weren't embarrassed because they were used to diving. Suddenly, Aina was startled by the sight of the male club members enthusiastically lifting their naked friend. Aina felt there was no normal person in the club. She suddenly shouted that it was her welcome party and asked everyone to put on clothes. That night, they ran out of sake. Aina offered to buy more and Chisa agreed to accompany her. Before leaving, Aina ensured that the club members would keep their clothes on. Iori and Kohei mentioned that Aina should start getting used to the club's ways. Azusa noted that Iori and Kohei adapted quickly. Kohei suddenly saw a package of bamboo shoots and asked who bought them and why they didn't buy mushrooms instead. Iori said bamboo shoots were tastier, but Kohei argued that bamboo shoots were food for people without taste. Not wanting to lose, Iori said mushrooms were for people with bad taste. That trivial matter made Iori and Kohei start arguing. Kohei claimed that Iori could not tell the difference between a cracker and a cookie. As their emotions escalated, Ryujiro intervened and Shinji suggested settling the dispute with a game. The game chosen by Shinji was Emitakuji, and the specific game determined was the Pocky game. Iori was curious about who came up with that idea, and it turned out to be Azusa. She encouraged Iori to play the Pocky game. Iori thought it was a strange game, but Ryujiro insisted that it was a sacred game chosen by Mitakuji, so they had to accept it. Since there were no Pocky sticks available, Ryujiro replaced them with Jumbo Fugashi sticks. Iori and Kohei prepared to play the game. The rule was simple. The first person to let go of the stick from their mouth would lose. Both of them immediately started biting into the Fugashi with enthusiasm. Ryujiro even commented that the game was more beautiful than he had imagined. In the end, neither of them won. Kohei even complained that the Fugashi had nearly destroyed his mouth. Azusa then sent a message to Chisa, asking her to buy some Pocky. Chisa suspected that something had happened while she and Aina were not there because Azusa mentioned that Iori and Kohei wanted to play the Pocky game. Iori and Kohei then invited their seniors to join the game as well. Ryujiro asked how they would determine the pairs for the game, and Iori suggested using rock, paper, scissors. When Chisa and Aina arrived at Grand Blue, they were shocked to find Iori and the others undressing. Aina questioned why they were like that. Iori explained that they were playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who would play the Pocky game. Aina was confused as to why playing rock, paper, scissors required them to remove their clothes. Shinji then explained that rock, paper, and scissors were naked, so the players had to be naked as well. Ryujiro then announced that the diving club had new members, so they needed to prepare for the license class. Kohei joked that the license was for the person who could strip the fastest, while Iori said it was for the fastest drinker. Shinji was baffled by their reasoning, as the license was clearly for diving. Hearing that, Iori and Kohei were shocked because they had not mastered diving at all. Shinji asked if they had read the diving manual, and both of them claimed they had. To test their knowledge, Shinji asked them some questions. He asked if they knew hand signals, and Kohei responded that they were simply gestures. Ryujiro explained that hand signals were crucial for communication underwater. Shinji then demonstrated a hand signal and asked them to interpret its meaning. Shinji's gesture meant stop, look here, and dive. However, Iori interpreted it as stop for a moment, I am going to kill you right here. Shinji then asked what Iori would do after receiving that hand signal. Iori responded that he would shoot Shinji first with an underwater gun. Shinji concluded that Iori could not be trusted with hand signals. Next, it was Kohei's turn. Kohei was confident that he would do better than Iori. Shinji showed another hand signal, which meant there is an issue, oxygen is running out, ascending. However, Kohei interpreted it as Yahoo Ayin, yeah. After receiving that signal, Kohei decided that he would keep watching Shinji forever. Shinji suspected that Iori and Kohei had not studied at all. They both apologized, and Shinji handed them the book so they could properly learn from it. While reading the diving manual, Nanaka approached Iori and asked if he was studying for the license. Iori mentioned that he had only learned hand signals. Nanaka then moved closer to Iori, making him nervous. She told him that he needed to memorize the hand signals. Leaning in, she whispered to him that she had heard rumors about him and Chisa dating. Hearing that, Iori immediately signaled to Shinji and the others that he was in trouble. Iori then approached Azusa and told her that Nanaka had heard about him and Chisa dating. He asked Azusa for help, and she agreed. Feeling relieved because he could rely on her, he asked what she was planning to do. It turned out that Azusa intended to tell Nanaka who Iori actually liked. Before she could say anything, Iori suddenly shouted that he was deeply in love with Chisa. Hearing that, Nanaka seemed upset and walked toward him. Iori quickly gave another hand signal to Shinji and the others, calling for backup. Iori wanted to explain the situation to Nanaka, but to his surprise, she looked pleased instead. She admitted that she had been worried since Iori and Chisa had not been getting along recently. If Iori was saying such things, it meant their relationship was fine. Azusa asked Nanaka if she was okay, but Nanaka simply stated that Iori and Chisa seemed so close that they really looked like a couple. Azusa then asked what she would do if Iori and Chisa actually started dating. Nanaka admitted that she did not know. Iori thought Azusa's question was unreasonable. However, what Nanaka meant was that she was unsure of what she would do. Iori became convinced that one day Nanaka would end up killing him. He assured her that such a thing would never happen, but as Chisa's older sister, she could not ignore it if Chisa ended up in a relationship. The next day was diving practice. Each person was paired up, Shinji with Kohei, Chisa with Iori, and Aina with Azusa. Iori felt awkward about being partnered with Chisa. Nanaka then told everyone to change into their swimsuits. Aina was surprised that Nanaka and Azusa were changing in front of everyone, but Chisa explained that since they were already wearing swimsuits, it was not a big deal. As usual, Ryujiro and Shinji were wearing nothing. After that, they put on their diving suits. While walking toward the sea, Iori asked Nanaka why she had paired him with Chisa. She admitted that she wanted them to make up. Iori then asked what would happen if the opposite occurred. Azusa reassured him that Chisa was very friendly when she was underwater. Before diving, Chisa asked Iori not to stray too far from her. She asked if he was nervous and reassured him that they would be swimming in shallow waters. She also told him to let her know immediately if anything happened. Iori understood and followed her. When they reached the ocean floor, Iori followed Chisa's lead as she dived ahead of him. He realized that she was not actually mad at him. She pointed out various locations and marine life around them. Iori understood that Chisa took diving very seriously to ensure that accidents did not happen and so that everyone could enjoy the underwater scenery. After practice, Aina said that the experience was really fun. Azusa and Nanaka were happy that she had enjoyed it so much. Chisa then asked Iori if he had fun, and he admitted that he did. Seeing that Iori and Chisa had made up, Azusa and Nanaka were confident that everything would be fine. Suddenly, Iori remarked that Chisa was definitely Nanaka's little sister because he could tell just by looking at her from behind. According to him, Chisa had a spectacularly shaped butt. Upon hearing that, Chisa immediately beat him up. Iori and his 5 friends had just finished their German remedial class. They were surprised at how easy it turned out to be. After class, they planned to have some drinks and agreed to do so at Iori's place. However, Iori felt something was off and asked why it had to be at his place. It turned out they wanted to check if Iori and Chisa were living together, as Iori had mentioned before. Iori was certain that if they found out the truth, they would kill him. He didn't mind if they discovered he was dating Chisa, but he felt it would be disastrous if they found out he was living with Chisa's very sexy older sister. He couldn't even imagine what would happen. Just as Iori was about to ask Kohei for help, Kohei grinned at him instead. After class, Iori informed Nanaka that his friends would be visiting his room that day and asked her to hide somewhere. Nanaka didn't understand why, but Iori couldn't explain. He just said his life was in danger. Nanaka was puzzled since it was Iori's friends who were coming. Shortly after, Kohei and Iori's other friends arrived, bringing drinks. They only then realized it was a dive shop and seemed interested. Iori quickly invited them to go straight to his room, but they seemed to want to look around the shop first. Upon reaching Iori's room, they were suddenly shocked by underwear scattered on the floor, which naturally surprised them. Iori was sure it was Azusa's doing. Iori's friends were upset and called him a traitor. Suddenly, Shinichiro stated that Iori wasn't betraying them. He even referred to the bra as a hat and asked them not to make a fuss about it. Shortly after, you found a lipstick, shocking them again. This time, Iori was sure it was Ayina's doing. Shinichiro instead referred to the lipstick as a suppository. You blamed Iori, but Iori reasoned that their club often used it for games. Shinichiro suspected that the bra didn't belong to Chisa because of its jumbo size. Hajime even speculated that whoever took it off wouldn't dare go home, and you was sure no woman would dare go home without a bra. However, Iori thought Azusa wasn't normal. Not long after, Hajime saw a long-haired wig, then Kenta found a female high school uniform. Hajime screamed, prompting Kohei to ask what was wrong with them. Hajime was puzzled that Iori had many strange items. Shinichiro even suspected Iori was a dangerous person, and Yu suggested they pretend not to see it. Seeing a magazine, Shinichiro asked if Iori was looking for a part-time job, and Yu asked if there was something Iori wanted to buy. Iori said that diving required a lot of expenses. When they opened the job vacancy magazine, they were surprised to see a job marked as model, especially seeing the wig and female high school uniform. They became increasingly scared thinking about it. They immediately started the drinking party to toast their success in the German remedial. Suddenly, Shinichiro returned from the bathroom and told Iori that he had found an angel. Shinichiro showed a photo of Nanaka on his phone to his friends. They said she was very beautiful. Shinichiro said that he met Nanaka while getting some fresh air outside. Shinichiro realized when he saw her, he thought about dating her. Kenta said it was impossible, and Hajime said they were on different levels. Shinichiro understood that but really wanted Nanaka to bear his children. Iori was sure Shinichiro had gone mad, and everyone was even embarrassed to know him. Not long after, Shinichiro went out again because he wanted to meet Nanaka. He even said he wanted to kneel and ask Nanaka to date him. Iori finally understood how Shinichiro confessed his feelings to a girl, and Kohei wondered about Shinichiro's past. Shinichiro mentioned that when he returned, he would become a man. They all speculated about what might happen to Shinichiro, acknowledging that Nanaka was very beautiful and certain that Shinichiro would cry if she rejected him. Shortly after, Shinichiro returned naked and in tears, making his friends curious about what had happened. Shinichiro scolded Iori. explaining that when he went to the beach, he saw many men. Hearing this, Kohei and Iori immediately understood. Kenta didn't grasp the situation but was sure it was horrifying. Hajime also mentioned that seeing naked men could make his eyes rot, even though Iori and Kohei saw it almost every day. Iori then calmed him down and invited him for a drink, especially since Kohei was also certain Nanaka would reject Shinichiro. Hajime even remarked that it was impossible for Shinichiro to get a girlfriend. Shinichiro wondered why his friends couldn't comfort him a little. Hajime and the others had at least confirmed that Iori wasn't living with Chisa. They also mentioned that Kohei's joke wasn't funny, but Kohei insisted he wasn't joking, prompting Iori to hit Kohei to stop him from talking. Iori also said that Kohei liked to make jokes. Hajime and Kenta became doubtful that Iori was dating Chisa. Even Yu found it strange for Iori to have a girlfriend. Suddenly, Chisa came into Iori's room and said she had finished her bath. Chisa apologized, saying she didn't know Iori's friends were in his room and quickly left. Iori immediately stood up, ready to run away, but all of his friends held him back and beat him up together. The next morning, Iori asked Chisa if she didn't feel guilty seeing him all battered. Chisa apologized and Nanaka mentioned that Iori's life was truly in danger. That day, Iori, Chisa, Aina, and Kohei were discussing places to dive. Shinji and Ryujiro approached them, and Aina told them she wanted to get a license to dive in various places. Shinji and Ryujiro were pleased to see Aina enthusiastic about club activities. That day, Itari and Kohei had brought sports clothes as their seniors had requested. Their activity was a doubles tennis match aiming for the buddy system, more precisely, they were after the prize money. It turned out to be an idea from the Tinkerbell tennis captain, Kudo. So if the Peekaboo Club lost, they would have to give up the prize money and the titles from the previous two contests. Hearing that, Iori and Kohei wondered why their seniors accepted the challenge when they couldn't beat the tennis club at tennis. Iori was sure Kudo planned to take revenge and even intended to humiliate the diving club. Shinji understood that and decided that humiliating Iori and Kohei was a trivial matter to get the prize money. The diving club members arrived at the tennis court. Iori and the others were ready, but Azusa and Nanaka didn't participate. They chose to cheer instead. Iori asked why Aina was wearing a running jacket. It turned out Aina was embarrassed to show her legs if she wore a tennis uniform. Iori wondered since Aina had dared to wear sexy clothes during the contest. Aina mentioned that during the contest, she felt brave because she was wearing makeup and was also drunk. Iori then asked what makeup actually meant to Aina. She explained that she felt insecure about her appearance when she was with Nanaka and Azusa. Iori commented that the running jacket suited their team because they were still amateurs. In the locker room, Chisa was shocked because she was supposed to be wearing a running jacket, but it seemed like Nanaka had switched it with a sexy tennis outfit. Before the match started, Kudo explained that they would play 3 sets, with one set being a doubles match. Kudo teased Iori, asking why he was not wearing women's clothes again. He then approached Aina and asked if she was a new member of the diving club. Kudo did not recognize Aina at all without her makeup. Kohei remarked that Aina's makeup was like armor protecting her from enemies. The first match began with Shinji and Ryujiro representing the diving club. Surprisingly, they managed to score a point on their very first hit. The players from the Tinkerbell Club did not expect Shinji's fast serve. When the ball came toward the Peekaboo team, Ryujiro hit it hard and secured another point. Azusa pointed out that the power levels between the teams were vastly different, which was why Shinji and Ryujiro easily dominated. During the set change, Iori asked where the other members were. Nanaka informed him that their friends were upstairs. Iori and Kohei went to check, only to find that everyone was completely passed out from drinking too much. Azuma explained that Tinkerbell had brought drinks for them, and they ended up drinking too much. Iori was puzzled. There were still drinks left, so how did everyone get drunk so quickly? The drink evaporated instantly when exposed to air, meaning it had an extremely high alcohol content. Itari and Kohei informed Azusa and the others that the rest of the club members were drunk. Not long after, Shinji and Ryujiro started staggering. Nanaka was confused about why their movements were off, and Iori and Kohei realized that Shinji and Ryujiro must have secretly been drinking as well. At that point, Tinkerbell was leading against Peekaboo, and if things continued like that, Peekaboo would lose. Kohei asked if there was a way to sober up Shinji and Ryujiro, and Iori came up with an idea. During the court change, while the Tinkerbell players were taking a break to drink, Iori and Kohei swapped their drinks with alcohol. The first set ended with Peekaboo taking the win. Chisa was surprised by what Iori and Kohei had done. Iori called it a comeback strategy, while Kohei said that instead of sobering up their own team, it was better to make the opposing team drunk. Kudo was frustrated with Iori and Kohei's actions. For the second set, Peekaboo chose Chisa and Aina to play. Before heading to the court, Chisa asked Nanaka where her running jacket was, but Nanaka told her that it was at home. At that moment, Aina felt insecure and asked Chisa if she knew how to play tennis. Chisa admitted that she was not very good at it. A player from Tinkerbell greeted Chisa by calling her the beauty contest winner. She was actually the runner-up. That girl mocked Chisa, saying she only won because her skirt flipped up. She also claimed that Chisa's sexiness had no effect on their team and even told her to lift her skirt for the audience. Hearing that, Chisa became furious. The match was much more balanced this time compared to the previous one. Meanwhile, Azusa tried to sober up Shinji and Ryujiro by giving them water. Chisa seemed fired up and it looked like she and Aina were perfectly in sync. Iori told the others to cheer for Chisa by shouting "Nice buddy." Unfortunately, the previously drunk club members misheard it as "nice body," causing them to think there was a sexy girl nearby. Everyone enthusiastically chanted Chisa's name, which only made her feel embarrassed and annoyed. Aina shouted at the audience to stop their yelling. The Tinkerbell team planned to take down Aina first, seeing her as the weaker link. During the game, the Tinkerbell team blatantly aimed the ball at Aina's body to attack her. Aina fell after being hit by the ball. Iori shouted that what the Tinkerbell team did was very dangerous. Kohei mentioned they were indeed targeting Aina's body by aiming at their opponents. Shortly after, Chisa managed to retaliate, making Azusa and Nanaka feel proud. Iori and the others cheered Chisa on again, this time calling her "nice body," which naturally embarrassed her. The second set was won by the Tinkerbell team. After the match, Chisa immediately approached Iori and hit him. The third match began with Iori and Kohei ready to face the Tinkerbell team. Iori scored a point on his first hit. Kudo was surprised by this, realizing Iori's skill. Not long after, Iori scored again. Azusa didn't expect Iori to be good at sports. Shinji mentioned that Iori had good control in lifting Chisa's skirt. Kohei was amazed at Iori's prowess. Iori realized he was indeed good at sports other than swimming. Kudo asked Iori not to act arrogant. The tennis match was evenly matched, with the ball being well received. When the ball headed towards Kohei, Iori was confident Kohei could handle it. Unfortunately, Kohei's hit was so weak that he couldn't return the ball. Kohei told Iori that the opposing team was very tough, even though it was Kohei himself who was lacking. Once again, Kohei couldn't receive the serve properly and they lost in the early round. Iori began to worry about how to defeat them since Kohei was the reason they failed. Suddenly, Kudo said he recorded the match to study it later, but he actually used the recording to laugh at their opponents' outfits during the match. Iori and Kohei had no choice but to truly crush the opposing team. Iori hit the ball so hard that it got stuck in the fence. Iori served the ball again with force and Kudo kept dodging it. It turned out Iori was aiming for the recording camera, but Kudo managed to block the ball. Not long after, Iori and Kohei started fighting. Kohei reminded Iori to care more about their score than the recording camera. Iori understood. This time he indeed had to crush someone. Iori deliberately hit the ball towards Kohei, knocking him out. Kudo was puzzled by Iori's actions. Iori dragged Kudo and said they could substitute players since one of their players had an accident. This time, Shinji and Ryujiro were ready to defeat Kudo, allowing Peekaboo to win the tennis match against Tinkerbell. When Kohei regained consciousness, he scolded Iori for hitting the ball at him. Although Aina thought Iori and Kohei lacked sportsmanship, Azusa believed they at least managed to win. Azusa didn't expect Iori to be good at tennis. Inaka asked since when Iori could play tennis. Iori said he practiced tennis with his friends after graduation, thinking the tennis club was the best way to get a girlfriend. Azusa asked why Iori didn't join the tennis club despite practicing hard. Iori said he wasn't given the chance to choose. He felt he had enough of tennis because there were other things he wanted to do. Chisa handed Iori a towel and praised his game. After winning the cash prize from the tennis match, the diving club held a training camp, with the destination being Okinawa. They all knew Okinawa was an amazing place. On that day, Iori and Kohei were excited about their upcoming trip to Okinawa. Suddenly, Shinji approached them with an offer for a good part-time job. Iori and Kohei questioned why they needed to work part-time. Shinji explained that the earnings from the job would fund their trip. Iori then asked if they hadn't already received money from the tennis tournament prize. It turned out that the prize money only covered the trip itself. The rest had to be paid out of pocket. The next day, Aina noticed Iori and Kohei looking exhausted. Iori mentioned he needed money, and Kohei remarked that earning money wasn't easy. Azusa then inquired if Shinji had given them a part-time job the previous day. Apparently, the part-time job Iori and Kohei did involve moving goods. After completing the task, they were paid a decent wage. After a day's work, they spent time drinking at a bar, but they hadn't anticipated that their hard-earned money would vanish instantly to pay for the rather expensive drinks. Azusa asked where Shinji was at that time. Iori explained that Shinji had gone to earn money as they had the previous day, but Iori and Kohei couldn't handle the heavy lifting for 2 consecutive days. Azusa mentioned that Ryujiro was also working. Iori speculated that Ryujiro might be working as a gigolo, while Kohei guessed he was a show dancer. Azusa laughed at their assumptions and invited them all to visit Ryujiro's workplace. They arrived at the bar where Ryujiro worked. Iori and the others were surprised to find that Ryujiro was a bartender, which Aina thought looked impressive. Seeing Ryujiro as a bartender reminded Iori of the bartender who had presented them with a hefty bill for their drinks the previous day. Unexpectedly, Kohei immediately apologized to Ryujiro, feeling guilty for imagining him as a show dancer. Chiza wondered what kind of bar Iori and Kohei had envisioned. Azusa informed them that the prices at that bar were affordable. Ryujiro explained that his boss wanted the bar to be enjoyable for college students as well. Before long, young female customers arrived. The barmaster greeted Azusa and recognized those with her as Ryujiro's juniors. Azusa mentioned that they wanted to see where Ryujiro worked. When asked for their opinion by the barmaster, Iori commented that Ryujiro looked odd as a bartender, and Kohei even asked when the master planned to fire Ryujiro. The master stated that Ryujiro was very popular with the customers. Iori and the others observed how Ryujiro served the customers. He was friendly and made them feel comfortable chatting with him. His polite and charming demeanor led some customers to openly express their fondness for him. Iori wished the master would plant a knife in Ryujiro's head. Shiza asked Iori to stop making such strange requests. Iori wondered how that female customer could like Ryujiro. He assumed that bartenders were only popular among women, and Kohei thought the job looked cool. In fact, Azusa believed the female customer liked Ryujiro because he was innocent and sweet-talking. The barmaster offered Iori and Kohei the chance to try being bartenders as well. They changed into bartender attire, and Azusa thought they looked very fitting. Iori felt that wearing clothes around sake felt very strange. Azusa understood because they were both used to drinking without wearing shirts. The master allowed Iori and Kohei to take care of Azusa and the other female customers. They appeared nervous, but Chiza reminded them that the customers they were serving were friends, so if they messed up while serving, she would understand. Azusa ordered a gin lime, as did Chiza. Before long, Ryujiro prepared their orders and Azusa thanked him. Iori and Kohei observed that the drink Ryujiro served was a mix of gin and lime, making a gin lime. Aina then ordered a screwdriver. Hearing that name, Iori immediately thought about the drink's mix and promptly served a glass with a screwdriver tool in it. Seeing the drink, Aina was upset and remarked that there was something strange about her drink. In fact, a screwdriver is a mix of vodka and orange juice. Iori and Kohei truly didn't understand. They simply mixed ingredients based on the drink's name. Aina then asked if they were messing with her. Iori apologized and said it was just a silly joke. He then made another drink, but this time he replaced the screwdriver with a flathead screwdriver, which of course made Aina furious. She almost stabbed him with a flathead screwdriver. Iori asked if that was still wrong, and Kohei told him that was why he had advised him to use a precision screwdriver. Aina then changed her drink order to a Moscow Mule. Iori and Kohei immediately started thinking about the ingredients, breaking down Moscow into Mos and Cow, and somehow concluding it meant Marimo, moss balls. Aina had no idea what the two of them were thinking, considering that a Moscow Mule is actually a mix of vodka, lime, and ginger ale. She scolded them and told them to do it properly. Hearing that, the barmaster laughed, amused by their antics. He handed them a book containing various cocktail recipes and preparation methods. As Iori flipped through the book, he commented on how many cocktails had confusing names. Kohei, however, said Iori was only confused because he lacked imagination. To Kohei, it was easy to picture the drink's appearance based on its name. Iori then pointed to a menu item called Sex on the Beach, and Kohei imagined it as a pink heart. But when Iori mentioned Cherry Blossom, Kohei, instead of picturing the drink, imagined Shinichiro shirtless. Iori was annoyed by Kohei's mental images, accusing him of just imagining whatever he wanted. Aina suggested that for a trendy place like that, they should talk about something from a movie or a drama, but she doubted Iori and Kohei could pull it off. Determined to prove her wrong, the two tried to reenact scenes from movies and dramas, shaking drinks dramatically, sliding glasses across the counter, and making toasts. However, their execution completely shattered the elegant image Aina had in her mind. Afterward, Iori and Kohei got into another argument. Seeing this, the barmaster speculated that the two were very close. Ryujiro commented that they were always together. When the barmaster asked about the nature of Iori and Kohei's relationship, Azusa and Ryujiro jokingly said it was a naked relationship. The barmaster assumed they were just messing around, but Azusa told him to ask them directly. The barmaster then approached Iori and asked if he had a girlfriend. Iori hesitated before saying that he kind of had one. The barmaster continued questioning him, asking if his girlfriend had neck-length hair. Iori confirmed it. The barmaster then asked if she appeared cold but was actually awkward. Iori confirmed that as well. When the barmaster asked if there were many boundaries between him and his girlfriend, Iori agreed again. Iori was confused as to why the barmaster was asking these questions, but his answers led the barmaster to believe that Iori was dating Kohei. With a serious expression, the barmaster told Iori that love comes in many forms and that he had surprised him. At that moment, Kohei offered Aina some oolong tea made in Peekaboo's signature style, but Aina refused. Suddenly, the barmaster asked for the drink and immediately downed it. Moments later, he was completely knocked out. Iori was shocked to discover that the barmaster could not handle alcohol. Kohei's oolong tea was actually a mix of vodka and whiskey. Ryujiro explained that once the barmaster got drunk like that, he would not wake up. Iori tried to wake him up, whispering that he had no idea what would happen to him if he fell asleep there. Instantly, the barmaster shot up and glared at him sharply. That evening, Iori and the others were walking home. Ryujiro admitted he didn't expect the master to wake up so quickly. Kohei was curious about what Iori had whispered to the master. Iori claimed he had just given a usual warning. Kohei and Iori visited Shinichiro's house, bringing beer. Kenta and Hajime had been waiting there for a while. Iori apologized for making them wait, explaining that Kohei and he had just returned from work. They drank together. Shinichiro asked his friends why he couldn't get a girlfriend. They cited reasons like an unattractive face, bad personality, poor life choices, and suggested he should just give up. Shinichiro was annoyed by these answers. They told him not to think too much about it, as most men in their department didn't have girlfriends. In reality, their department had 140 men and 3 women. Shinichiro asked if that was true for Iori. Iori immediately bowed and said he had never touched Chiza, so there was nothing for them to be jealous of. Hearing this, they forgave Iori. Iori was puzzled, recalling how they had enthusiastically beaten him before. Hajime even recounted the day they beat Iori. You had put weeds into Iori's mouth when he fainted, calling it Ikebana. Hajime then realized why you hadn't been hanging out with him lately. Kenta speculated that you might have a girlfriend, but Shinichiro didn't believe it. Kenta said, judging by his face, it wouldn't be surprising if you had a girlfriend. Iori asked what if you did have a girlfriend. Shinichiro still didn't believe it, saying Yu was the first to talk to him when he wasn't socializing in class, and that's how Shinichiro started hanging out with Hajime and Kenta. Kohei suggested inviting Yu to join them. Iori called Yu, informing him that they were gathering at Shinichiro's house and invited him to join. Unfortunately, Yu said he'd call back in about 30 minutes. Iori heard a girl's voice near Yu and concluded that Yu was making love to a girl for the next 30 minutes. Kohei and Hajime had suspected it. They prepared to go to his house, agreeing to work together to prevent Yu from getting what he wanted. Meanwhile, Yu was alone with a girl named Rie in his room. As they were about to get intimate again, the doorbell rang. Yu wondered if his friends had come to his house but thought it was too soon. Suddenly, a male voice said there was a package for Yu. Yu ignored it, focusing on his girlfriend. The voice kept calling Yu, but he continued to ignore it. Suddenly, the voice said he had 200 JAV collections that Yu had ordered. Hearing this, Rie was shocked. Yu claimed JAV stood for Javanese Animal Video. Suddenly, tapes were slid under the door. The person kept shouting for Yu to open the door because he couldn't fit them all through. Yu was sure it was his friends playing a trick. Meanwhile, Shinichiro was willing to give up his precious DVD collection. He didn't care anymore if his misfortune could ruin Yu's happiness. Suddenly, Yu turned off his room lights. His friends wondered if he planned to continue his intimate activities. At that moment, Yu assured Rie they wouldn't be disturbed again. Suddenly, Iori showed a silhouette shadow from Yu's bedroom window to distract him, making Yu think he was participating in a silhouette quiz. After that, Iori changed his line name to Ami and sent a message to Yu saying she missed him. When Yu opened the message, Yu was shocked and insisted that it was just a spam message. Rie immediately grabbed Yu's phone and read the message on Ami's phone, which turned out to be inappropriate. Furious, Rie choked Yu and demanded to know what was really going on. Yu explained that his friend had changed their line display name to prank him, and he even offered to show all the messages on his phone if Rie still did not believe him. Not satisfied with just that, Yu's friends continued messing with him by playing the voice of an film actress. Kohei felt they had gone far enough in teasing Yu and decided to leave, but as he walked away, he suddenly heard Rie call Yu her older brother. Hearing that piqued Kohei's interest, and he decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. He overheard that Yu and Rie were childhood friends, which made him furious. Kohei then returned to his friends, eager to mess with Yu using his soft voice. To everyone's surprise, the voice Kohei produced sounded exactly like a real girl's. His friends praised Kohei for his hidden talent, and he even managed to mimic different types of female voices, making it sound like a group of girls fighting over Yu. Not long after, Rie stormed out of the room, leaving Yu behind. Yu quickly ran after her and explained that it was just his male friends messing with him. He even promised to cut ties with them, but Rie no longer believed him. Hearing Yu's declaration, his friends immediately called him a traitor, saying he had nothing to do with him anymore. Unlike the others, Iori still wanted to believe in Yu, even though Yu was willing to end their friendship. He noticed the tears welling up in Yu's eyes, which made him hesitate. As they all kept watching Yu, Iori admitted that he could see a loser's aura on his face. At that moment, Yu officially ended his relationship with Rie. However, to everyone's shock, he then asked Rie to introduce him to her friends. Enraged, Rie immediately sent Yu flying with a punch. His friends, being the loyal companions they were, stood ready to catch him. That night, Iori and his classmates were having a drinking party together. Iori and the others laughed at Yu, who had just been dumped by his girlfriend. Hajime hit Yu, and Yu, feeling frustrated, questioned whose fault it really was. They all agreed to blame Yu, which left Yu confused as to why none of them felt guilty at all. He was also baffled as to why his friends did not respect his happiness. According to Hajime, they never said that Yu could not have a girlfriend, but if he did, he had to be prepared to die. Kenta and Shinichiro agreed with that statement. Iori whispered to Kohei that their friend's way of thinking seemed dangerous. Yu then asked when they would get girlfriends themselves. They were all stunned. Kenta admitted that they had indeed wasted a lot of time, but Hajime believed that they would be fine. Hajime reminded Iori about his promise to arrange another group date. Iori said that he could not keep organizing group dates indefinitely, but when Hajime offered 500 yen per person, Iori immediately agreed. The next day, Iori started thinking about how to get Chisa to agree to the group date. Kohei suggested making Chisa play a penalty game. The game that Iori had in mind was the King's Game, but according to Kohei, the real issue was figuring out how to persuade Chisa to play. Iori then devised a clever trick to trap Chisa into joining them. That afternoon, the diving club members were at Grand Blue. Suddenly, Iori approached Chisa and Aina, offering them sashimi and chopsticks. They were immediately interested and were surprised that Iori could cut fish so well. Just as they picked up the chopsticks, they were caught off guard when Iori suddenly shouted that they were starting the King's Game. Iori then handed out chopsticks to everyone. Shinji and Azusa pressured Aina to join in since she had already taken a chopstick, but Aina protested, saying that she only took one because Iori had offered her sashimi. Iori argued that he never actually mentioned the word sashimi when making his offer. Aina was annoyed by Iori's excuse. Nanaka told Aina not to get mad, while Iori encouraged her to just try it once and stop if she did not like it. Reluctantly, Aina and Chisa joined the King's Game. The person who got the King's chopstick was Azusa, which meant that she had the right to give orders that everyone had to follow. Azusa commanded that everyone had to keep playing until the game was over. Chisa and Aina realized that they had been set up. Aina asked why their friends were so insistent on getting her and Chisa to play. Nanaka simply said that they had to obey the king's orders. A few hours earlier, Iori had begged Nanaka and Azusa to join the game, and surprisingly, they both agreed immediately. It turned out that Nanaka wanted to use the game to mess with Chisa, while Azusa wanted to mess with Nanaka. Realizing this, Iori could only hope that nothing terrible would happen. The second round of the game began, and once again, Azusa became the king. She ordered numbers 1 through 7 to remove something. The men quickly took off their clothes, and Azusa also told Nanaka to remove something. As Nanaka was about to take off her top, Aina stopped her, suggesting that taking off socks should be enough. Chisa removed her socks, and Nanaka took off her stockings. Aina firmly requested that no one give inappropriate commands like that again. In the next round, Aina became the king. She ordered numbers 1 through 7 to refrain from getting naked at the next drinking party. Although they were somewhat reluctant, they had to follow the king's command. Iori and Kohei complained that forcing them to stay clothed was an extreme order, but Aina insisted that it was not strange at all. Shinji stated that they would try their best to follow it. In the following round, Nanaka became the king and commanded that number 3 had to confess their love to the person sitting to their left. Iori suspected that the order was meant for Chisa, so he encouraged Chisa to do it. However, it turned out that Chisa had number 2, while Ryujiro had number 3, and he was sitting next to Iori. Without hesitation, Ryujiro looked at Iori and declared his love for him. Iori felt like he was experiencing a nightmare. In the next round, Kohei became the king, giving Iori and Kohei a chance to target Chisa. Iori had to guess which chopstick belonged to Chisa, and he had prepared for this. Chisa's chopstick had a different length, indicating it was an odd number. Iori had differentiated the chopsticks based on odd and even numbers. Chopsticks of different lengths represented odd numbers, while those of the same length represented even numbers. Additionally, chopsticks with a rounded tip were assigned to the first number, and those with a square tip to the last number. Observing the shape of Chisa's chopstick, there were 2 possibilities, number 1 or 3. Kohei then commanded that someone introduce a friend to him at the next drinking party, directing this order to number 4. Iori scolded Kohei for choosing the wrong number. Kohei explained that he had only counted the fingers on Iori's hand, whereas he should have considered that 1 finger and 3 fingers corresponded to numbers 1 and 3. Witnessing their argument, Aina suspected that Iori and Kohei have ulterior motives. Azusa urged them to stop quarreling, and both Iori and Kohei realized their plan had failed. Chisa then inquired about Iori and Kohei's true intentions. They unanimously declared that their goals were money and women. Aina and Chisa labeled them as scum. Kohei insisted it was a misunderstanding, explaining that some people had promised them money if they organized a group date. According to Iori, it was a club activity to raise funds for a trip. Chisa wondered why Iori and Kohei didn't just get jobs. Iori mentioned that their plan seemed to have failed and they needed to find another way, but Kohei pointed out that they were running out of time. Azusa reminded them that they had to follow the king's command, and the person with number 4 was Shinji. Consequently, Shinji invited his friends to a group date with Iori's acquaintances. That drinking party felt more like a gathering between seniors and juniors. The next day, Iori mentioned that he still hadn't saved enough money for the trip. Kohei said they would work the next day to earn additional funds. Aina hoped that Kohei's job was legitimate. Iori explained that he and Kohei would be staff at an event introduced by Azusa the following day. Aina suspected it might be tough, but Kohei assured her it would be brief. Iori also offered Chisa and Aina the opportunity to earn money, but they immediately declined. They arrived at Grand Blue, where the seniors greeted them. At that time, Nanaka and Azusa were discussing a dive computer. They wanted to buy another one, but had limited funds. However, Iori misheard and thought they were talking about daikon or radish. He offered to buy one for them. Nanaka and Azusa were puzzled by his offer, explaining that it was very expensive. Their statement sounded as if they doubted Iori's financial capability, prompting him to assure them he could buy one. Nanaka and Azusa realized Iori had misunderstood. Just as Nanaka was about to explain, Azusa covered her mouth. Azusa then asked what Chisa would do if Iori bought her a dive computer. Chisa replied that she would treat Iori like a human for 15 minutes. Iori wondered how Chisa usually treated him. Iori then asked why Nanaka and Azusa wanted to buy a radish. Azusa laughed at his question. Nanaka clarified that they weren't referring to a radish, but a dive computer, a device that shows air pressure, water depth, and temperature. It indicates how long a diver can stay underwater and costs between 30,000 to 100,000 yen. That day, Shinji invited everyone to go to a diving equipment store. When they arrived, they were amazed by the wide variety of diving gear available. Kohei did not even know what to buy. Iori then mentioned what they needed to get, but Kohei remembered that, as beginners, they only needed to rent the equipment. Aina recalled that Nanaka had told her to buy only a swimsuit and a towel. According to Shinji, if they wanted to purchase diving gear, they should start with a diving mask first. Not only was it affordable, but since the purpose of diving was to see underwater, it was best to find a mask that fit well. Some people said it was better to buy a dive computer first, since safety should be the priority to reduce nausea caused by pressure differences. Itori and Kohei had never used one before, so they asked if they would be fine without it. It turned out that they would not be diving at dangerous depths, and the diving instructor would not be reckless enough to let anything happen. So a dive computer was only necessary for divers going into deep waters or diving without an instructor. The seniors explained some of the equipment available in the store, such as a reef hook, which was used to anchor onto something, and an inflatable buoy. However, instead of focusing on the explanations, the two of them imagined absurd scenarios like hooking the reef hook onto Kohei's nose or making the buoy explode in front of the Yuri. They continued exploring the store to check out the diving gear. At that moment, Chisa seemed interested in an incredible underwater camera. She showed them a device that allowed communication underwater. It produced sound through bone conduction, but there was a special trick to using it. According to Azusa, it would be difficult to use while wearing a regulator. Suddenly, Aina came over and asked how to choose a regulator. Chisa suggested that Aina should just rent one. However, Aina imagined it as an indirect kiss. Iori was surprised that Aina still thought that way in a diving club, especially since Chisa had never even considered it before. Azusa explained that it was not like an indirect kiss. Based on the position when using a mouthpiece, what could really be considered an indirect kiss was sharing a toothbrush. Chisa added that at Grand Blue, all regulators were disinfected daily. At that moment, Aina and Chisa were browsing swimsuits when Aina suddenly asked if Chisa was really dating Iori. Chisa's expression made it clear that there was no way she would be dating Iori. She explained that when she said she was dating Iori, it was only to get back at him for bothering her during the beauty contest. Just then, they overheard Iori being scolded by a store employee for not changing in the fitting room. Seeing this, Chisa told Aina that she could not even imagine dating someone like Iori. Meanwhile, Iori was looking for Kohei, only to find him standing in front of a women's wetsuit, deep in thought. Kohei seemed completely mesmerized by the wetsuit. He was interested in it, but not to buy it for himself. Iori quickly understood what was going on and asked Chisa and Aina to try on the wetsuit. After they put it on, both of them gave their opinions. Chisa did not like it much because it did not have a zipper. Kohei suddenly shouted, seeming extremely grateful for what Iori had done. He said that maybe someday he would buy that wetsuit. Aina was puzzled since it was a women's wetsuit. They decided to buy diving masks. While they were busy picking out their own masks, Iori noticed Chisa holding the camera. Azusa teased him, saying that Chisa looked cute while checking out the camera. Iori suspected that Chisa wanted to take pictures as a keepsake. Azusa was sure that Chisa was really happy to have friends her age to go diving with. When they arrived back at Grand Blue, Nanaka greeted them. It looked like they had bought a lot of equipment for their upcoming dives. They showed Nanaka the new diving masks they had just purchased, and Chisa showed off her new camera. Nanaka commented that they would need to work hard because a trip to Okinawa was expensive, and on top of that, they had just bought new gear. The next day, Iori and Kohei worked as event staff at the festival, while Chisa and Aina helped Azusa welcome visitors. Kohei was already exhausted even though he had just started working. That night, after a long day, Kohei and Iori drank together while completely naked. Aina screamed and cried, convinced that she would never be able to get married after accidentally seeing Iori and Kohei naked. Iori, Kohei, and Chisa longed to go to Okinawa. That night, Nanaka told Shinji and Ryujiro that she would be holding a license exam in Okinawa, and Shinji and Ryujiro decided to go as well. After making all the necessary preparations, they finally set off for Okinawa. Upon arrival, excitement filled the air. Suddenly, Nanaka pulled out a picture of Aina from the festival the day before, capturing her in a revealing costume. Embarrassed, Aina let out a loud scream.